The execution of Karla Faye Tucker in Texas has prompted fresh discussion of the idea of returning to capital punishment here in Canada. Capital punishment coming up right after the break. Stay with us. Well, the state of Texas was in the news this week when they executed Karla Faye Tucker. The reaction here in Canada was a stunning combination of both revulsion and admiration, and it's raised the question again about whether Canada made the right move when we ended capital punishment in this country back in 1976. To debate the topic, we're joined now by Toronto criminal lawyer Karen McArthur and by Michael Harris, national affairs columnist for the Toronto Sun newspapers. So my question to you, Michael, should Canada return to the death penalty?
Mike, despite all the fake sentimentality around the Tucker execution, the answer has to be a resounding yes. First of all, most Canadians want it, twice as many as who are opposed. Secondly, I think people are sick of a justice system that's built around the needs and requirements of the perpetrators, and they think we ought to be paying attention to the survivors of the victims. And lastly, as much as all of us hate to say this, there are certain people who are beyond social redemption. Clifford Olson is one of those people. He will never again be a functioning member of society, and tragically, neither will his victims be.
Mike, there's no government that's pure enough or wise enough to claim the power to kill. We have human passions and prejudices lead to wrongful convictions, and I don't want them to lead to wrongful executions. Statistics, Britain, down south of the border, they all indicate that people are put on death row and unfortunately executed, even though they're factually innocent.
Karen, governments kill all the time. Governments reserve the right to kill. Let me give you a couple of examples.
Sure.
We have war, in which vast numbers of people are sent out to murder on behalf of the state. We have the right to kill in a civil insurrection. Policemen have the right to kill in the conduct of their duties. You and I have the right to kill if someone's threatening our lives. So don't tell me it brutalizes society. We're already there. And remember the numbers we're talking about here. In the United States, 100 people a year. More people get killed, get hit by lightning than that.
But if it doesn't brutalize society, Mike, then how come when you institute executions, when you institute state killing, the murder rate goes up? What does it teach the people when the state reduces itself to the role of a murderer? When it injects people, when it tortures people?
I watched the Tucker execution. It was not a happy event for anybody who saw it.
But what I saw to
the Tucker execution was not the state acting like someone who took a pickaxe to two human beings when she was in her 20s and ended their life. What I saw was a state that gave her 15 more years of life than they got, and then a lethal injection, which is a much better way of being introduced to the wider life than at the end of a pickaxe.
The end result is the same. Another dead human being, another dead person. It doesn't make it right.
That's right.
Capital punishment and murder are exactly the same thing. They're not opposites. They're similars, and they breed each other. And
so, Karen,
you know it, and I know it.
Do you think a soldier who goes out and shoots somebody is a murderer?
Yes, I do.
On behalf of the state?
I do.
So
killing is wrong, Michael. No matter which way you cut it, killing is wrong. And the real fundamental question, statistics aside, the economics of capital punishment aside, the economics of imprisonment aside, it comes down to this. Do you love to kill or do you hate to kill?
No.
If you hate to kill,
no.
like me, you're opposed to capital punishment.
If your fundamental value in your society is the preservation of life, and you're faced with, let me finish here, and you're faced with people who will cross that line in cold blood and take the most valuable thing all of us will ever have, that person has gone forfeit on their right to life. And secondly, the state that builds a system around the perpetrator's rights, who has already shown himself to be a cold-blooded killer, neglecting the families of the victims and the victims themselves who no longer have a voice, to me, that's cruel and unusual punishment. That's the state that's brutalized.
But you're not saying that, claiming for the victim's rights, how does putting someone to death help them? All it allows them to indulge in is retributive justice, revenge, the most primal of human urges. It doesn't bring back their family.
Yes, revenge is part of justice. I agree with you. It is part of justice.
No, I'm saying it's part of a primal urge, and it ought not to be part of the justice system. What do we really know about justice? Who's to say that?
If you guys cared about justice and you didn't want to have capital punishment, who run the legal system, you wouldn't have done away with a 25-year sentence that means 25 years. That's where you started to create bad faith with Canadians. Then it got to 15 years. Then it got to 15 years on faint hope under Section 745 for the dregs of humanity who didn't give any sympathy to their victims. We have consecutive sentencing rather than concurrent. Sorry, the other way around, because we have given a sort of dollar value discount to a killer who kills more than once. He should be in prison forever if he kills 5 people. He should get 5 consecutive sentences, not 1 concurrent, because 5 deaths don't mean anything.
Mike, we put people in jail out of self-defense. We put people in jail to keep them away from ourselves. We ought not to put people into jail to seek revenge and retributive justice. That's not a proper way to found the justice system. Because what do we know about real justice? Build it on compassion and empathy and dignity.
Yeah,
that is
I agree with all those principles,
humane.
but I'd like to see them directed towards people who are innocent victims,
not
the worst perpetrators. Yes, I do.
You're in favor of killing people.
Yes, I'm in favor of
the inescapable conclusion.
Let me just finish so that
Sure.
we're not talking about a generic thing here. I'm in favor of the state reserving the right to kill people like Paul Bernardo and Clifford Olson, who to me will never be functioning members of society, who have killed many people, who have exacted horror shows from the living victims, and who no longer are members of the human family. And to act as if Clifford Olson has a right to drag the country and those families back through this crime using the fate-hope provisions, to me shows a society that is totally, totally callous to the families.
We all have tribute or emotional aspects to ourselves that tend towards violence and aggression and psychopathology. It's all a question of degree, either lesser or greater. The crowd that was clapping and applauding ever so enthusiastically when Carla Tucker was put to death, they're showing the same type of passion for violence that Clifford Olson does.
No, they're not. No. You're confounding 2 things.
They're
the father of the
hate.
victim, Deborah Thornton, said, "What goes around comes around." Deborah, there's closure. What about the closure for the people who cannot put this behind them until that victim is not drawing, until that perpetrator is not drawing breath?
Until they're dead?
Yeah, that's got nothing to do with the same thing that drove the killer to kill. You can't equate those 2 things. Just as you can't equate.
They're similars, and they breed each other.
I think
when you get right down to it,
only by blurring those distinctions, Karen, can you make the point.
You institute state killing, murder rate goes up, and you've got the way our justice system works now. 1 in 5 from 1900 in Britain were found that were put on death row were found to be factually innocent. I'm not comfortable with a system where the state says I'm going to let 1 in 5 be put to death.
We're almost out of time. I'll just reiterate a couple of my points. If I have to make a choice between the innocent victims of criminals and their surviving family members and perpetrators of first-degree murder who decide to snuff out a human life, whether they are rehabilitated or remorseful or not, I will always choose the first group. I think they're the ones the system has let out, and I think that's why the overwhelming majority of Canadians, almost 70%, want this back, and I don't understand why people who are in the minority think they ought to be the tail that wags the dog, Karen.
Because people in the know, chiefs of police south of the border, only 1% of them are actually in favor of capital punishment.
Canadian Police Association here is.
Well, they're not practicing it. The people south of the border are. They know the facts. They know that innocent people are put to death. It's happened in other countries. I don't want it happening here because our system, the way it works now, humans, their passions, their prejudices, their mistakes lead, as I say, to people being wrongfully put to death. And that's not a system that I feel comfortable with, and it's not a society that I want to live in as a Canadian. And frankly, I watched the Carla Tucker debate, and they were saying which country's better. What other democratic country has a justice system better than the United States of America? Canada does. We chose the right course in 1976, and again a decade later, and I'm proud of it.
I want to thank Toronto criminal lawyer Karen McArthur for joining us today on the Great Canadian Debate.